Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc anime has just aired its third episode, and things had appeared to be going well until this very recent installment had dropped. Episode 3 had caused a stir within the fandom, especially amongst manga readers who were disappointed with the cut content within the anime. Additionally, animation enthusiasts had started to complain about how Ichigo vs Quilge had felt very stiff, stating that the animation didn't have enough sakuga, and in general there are some people who are complaining that the series feels like it is rushing through the story within the manga. The pacing is just too fast for them. Now in this video I want to discuss all of the issues surrounding the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, and I want to give my thoughts about whether if these issues are even plausible to have so early on in the run of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. We are only on episode 3 of a total of 52 episodes, yet there is already so much backlash and controversy within the fandom. In order to better understand the discourse surrounding the new 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, I'd asked everybody on Twitter what they dislike about the new Bleach 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, or whether if they think that people are just overreacting about episode 3 in general. I've even seen some people compare the third episode of the 1000-Year Blood War arc to Dragon Ball Super episode 5. Everybody knows how notoriously bad episode 5 was when it had dropped all those years ago, and it was just signs that Dragon Ball Super had a very disorganized production, and they were given actually very little to no time in pre-production before the anime had started to air, and these issues became glaringly obvious when episode 5 of Dragon Ball Super had dropped. But this isn't the case with Bleach. If you remember, the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime adaptation was first announced in March of 2020. We had the first trailer in December of 2021, and we know for a fact that the first course, so the first 12 episodes, actually have had 10 months of pre-production. This was before the series had started to air in October of this year. In comparison to other series, the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime actually has had a lot of time in pre-production. Now, as with any anime, there are going to be some glaring issues with some of the episodes. Whether if this was the staff running very close to deadlines and them having to wrap up work before it was completed, and additionally some moments that the directors would have storyboarded not being included within the final episode because of these time restraints. All too often, we see animation staff go back and touch up the broadcast versions of anime so that they look much better in their Blu-ray releases. And I have no doubt that when the first core of the 1000-Year Blood War arc is released on Blu-ray, a lot of the issues that people have with stiff animation or with scenes staying on screen for too long will actually be corrected. And additionally, any moments where the characters appear to be off-model, these are usually corrected for the Blu-ray release also. One of the biggest issues that people have with episode 3 is that it had recycled fighting animation between Ichigo and Quilge, as well as them cutting out several moments within the manga that had actually built up to the invasion of the Quincy, and the end of the episode actually rushing through the Quincy's invasion just so that the episode could end on this impactful cliffhanger. This scene in particular where Ichigo and Quilge are fighting and they loop this back and forth animation over 4 times, and people are saying that it feels quite a bit lazy. Now while the animation has been recycled, the upsides to this scene is that it has excellent compositing, which really make it difficult to even spot this recycled piece of animation. I mean, unless you're nitpicking and you're really looking at faults, then yeah, this scene has been recycled and they've used this clip over 4 times. But with everything that is going on screen, including the particle effects, visually how everything looks, how the lighting is conveyed thanks to Taguchi's direction, then I think it's pretty forgivable, especially considering some of the scenes that we had in the 2004 Bleach anime. I think there comes a point where fans are just over-analyzing and they're picking through moments within the series with a fine-tooth comb. This is most likely because the 1000-Year Blood War arc is a 200 chapter span worth of material that has been out in the public now completely for over 5 years. There has been so much time to actually reread all of this material and to digest all of it thoroughly. We didn't have this luxury back when the 2004 Bleach anime was airing, so a lot of the changes, additions and cuts that they have made really glanced over most fans. But if you compare the 2004 Bleach anime to the manga, then you'll notice that it has even more cut content, censorship and changes than this 1000-Year Blood War arc anime adaptation. What you have to remember is that this new anime has Kubo as its general supervisor, so every change that is being made to the series actually has to go through Kubo himself. So if he feels like certain scenes don't need to be within the anime but they were within the manga, then I'm going to trust Kubo's judgment. I don't think you should expect this new anime to be a one-to-one adaptation of the manga. Instead, I interpret it as a director's cut, where some scenes are changed, removed, and some scenes are added. And overall, we don't know what the end product is actually going to be. So who knows if some of this cut content is going to be reworded and included in later episodes. It is safe to say, with how episodes 1 to 3 have gone, that they're going to cut even more content with subsequent episodes. But does this mean that they are not going to reword or include this in some other way during later episodes? I think with Kubo supervising the anime, he will ensure that any content that is cut will be included in some other form. Like how the conversation between the lieutenants, while it was very nice to have it within the manga, it was quite redundant to have this included within the anime, especially if you know that Mayuri and Yamamoto were going to be talking later. And most of what the lieutenants were speculating was actually confirmed to be true by Mayuri during his conversation with Yamamoto. Now, while these moments serve to slow down the pace of the anime, what you have to understand is that Taguchi as a director loves fast-paced action. Now, it's for this reason that it may feel like the story is actually rushing through the material, but in general, even when the 2004 Bleach anime was adapting canon material, for most episodes it was actually adapting 4 to 5 chapters too. And this is because Kubo's manga is not very dialogue heavy. I mean, when I'm reading the manga, it's easy for me to get through 5 to 6 chapters in 20 minutes. Obviously, if you're really focusing, then it can take a bit longer, but in general, when you're just reading Bleach, it's very streamlined and so easy to flick through. But here are some comments from some of my followers as they give their thoughts about the discourse surrounding the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime. One user has actually problems with the anime and they don't like the stuff that they have cut, including Byakuya's speech. One user doesn't have any problems with the anime so far, including some of the manga material that they have cut because they didn't notice it. And this is in reference to Byakuya's speech about Sasakibe during his funeral. One user says that they think that people are just overreacting with episode 3, and as a long-time manga reader, the stuff that they have cut is 100% cut for the sake of more Uryu content. Now, this was the concern leading up to the release of episode 1. We were promised that the fight scenes would be extended within the anime, and Kubo would be making some changes to how the story unfolds in the anime version. But I think now that we've had 3 episodes released, it is evident that they are actually cutting material from the manga so that they can include anime exclusive scenes. I know some people would much rather prefer that they include everything within the manga, including additional anime scenes, but I just don't think that this is financially viable. The series has been greenlit for 52 episodes. They have a certain amount of runtime per episode to cover some material. You can really tell that they are flicking through the manga, picking what moments to include, what moments to exclude, and what anime-only scenes that they're going to incorporate into the story. Thankfully, we had kind of known this with the interviews that were conducted with the animation staff leading up to the first episode's release. They had said that there were going to be far more Uryu moments within the series, because Uryu is going to be a pivotal character who will play a major role within this arc. And this is something that the manga actually failed to do. Although it was an arc centered around the Quincy, Uryu had very little to no involvement, which led to him actually joining Yuhabak's army. But now with the anime, we've got these additional scenes of him reading about the history of the Quincy, questioning his father, and you can kind of see where this is going, where he'll eventually make his decision to join the Wanden Reich. And all of this was not within the manga. Personally, I love that they are cutting out comedic moments, any redundant moments that don't need to be there, in favor of these additional scenes that flesh out characters and help the Thousand Year Blood War arc to feel like more of a complete story. I mean, if people want a one-to-one adaptation of the manga, why don't they just go and read the manga? You have to accept that the anime is going to be totally different. This user also comments on the small production issue that was had within episode 3, where they had looped a certain part of the Ichigo vs Quilge fight for a couple of seconds. Aside from that, it was still a really great episode with excellent OST. Now, after 3 episodes, if you've had one of the smallest faults in one of the episodes, it just makes me think that people are wanting the Bleach anime to have one small slip up so that they can just blow it up all over Twitter and talk about how much of a trash series it is. It's one flaw in a otherwise really great episode, and I'm sure that we can cut the animation staff some slack. I am so confident that these scenes that appear to be a glaring issue within the broadcast version of episodes will be corrected for the Blu-ray release. Someone else says that they have faith in Kubo and they think that everybody is just overreacting, and the scenes that they are cutting appear to not be that important because in general those scenes have not really impacted the flow of the anime, and I think that this is totally correct. The only one I do have somewhat of an issue with personally is Byakuya's speech on Sasakibe, but I do think that this will be included in some way or another during a flashback where Yamamoto faces off against Driscoll Bercy, and we may get a look back on Sasakibe's life, because there is in fact a flashback flashback during that moment where we learn more about Sasakibe, how we had joined the head captain, so I feel like some of Byakuya's dialogue will be repurposed into that flashback. Although it won't be delivered by Byakuya, we will still get to learn it during a flashback sequence, I hope. Some people are upset about the cut content despite them knowing that it does help with the pacing of the anime. Others feel like that everybody is definitely overreacting. They've done an excellent job so far, they like the pacing, and they're enjoying that they are cutting out any irrelevant comedic moments. Instead, we're getting some actual important scenes involving Uryu and Ryuken's character. And this user even admits that it does seem like they had production problems with episode 3, but despite this, the episode ended up looking really good overall. Out of 3 episodes, we've had one that is average. The first 2 were absolutely incredible. I think it's too soon to actually start criticizing the animation staff. In general, most of the people who are crying and complaining seem to be manga readers who are very familiar with the actual source material. I, for one, immediately compared the episode to the manga after it's released for my manga vs anime series. This is so that I can have a better understanding of how the animation staff are actually approaching the anime adaptation. So far, they've not cut anything that's too important. And anything that has been, like I've said, probably will be included in a future scene. One of the users says that they appear to be nitpicking and not making real criticisms for the anime. I mean, you are literally nitpicking when you're looking at one sequence of animation where Quilge is hitting Ichigo and they repeat it 4 times over, because you know that they are going to correct this in the Blu-ray release. And in general, people think that the Ichigo vs Quilge fight had happened way too quickly, when in actuality it wasn't that much of a long fight within the manga anyway. And I never had assumed that this was one of the fights that was going to be extended. Firstly, it's not really a fight between Ichigo and Quilge anyway, because the beast Aeon plays such a big role in this battle also. So some of these episodes are not created in order. So you might have some of the staff focusing on the key moments of the series, so they may be adapting episode 6 before they even get around to doing episode 3. For fans who have read the manga, you know what is coming up. There are going to be some key moments that really need all of the love and attention from the animation staff, so I believe that episode 3 may have been somewhat of a sacrificial lamb so that we can have excellent versions of episode 5, 6 and 7. Maybe everybody overreacting is because they had to wait for 10 years and they had heard that Kubo was going to expand upon certain scenes, but despite this we're getting scenes cut from the manga. But you have to understand is that Kubo had given guidance to the anime staff, and it's because of his input that those moments were cut from the series. Now, while it would have been nice to see Haribel's Frashion speak with Orihime and Chad, in the grand scheme of things, how does this actually impact the flow of the 1000-Year Blood War arc? By removing this one moment that's pretty inconsequential, we'll get to have an additional moment that was not included within the manga, which actually serves to tell more of the story involving Uryu, Ryuken, the Quincy, or even seeing more Zero Division moments, because we don't know how the Zero Division are going to be handled within the anime yet. There is so much to consider, and I still think that it's too soon to actually judge the anime as a whole just based off of these first 3 episodes. If this series had released back in 2012 while the 1000-Year Blood War arc was being serialized in the manga, then I feel like a lot of these issues would have just flown over people's heads. People would have been so impressed and fallen in love with the introduction of this arc. It's because the material that's being adapted here is 10 years old, people have had a lot of time with it. The anime in general is being put under a microscope, because I've never seen this much anime versus manga comparison before. I mean, look at series like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. That was a complete adaptation of the manga with no filler included. The manga was complete at the time, but you don't see people comparing the anime and the manga version of FMA. And this is also the case with the Hunter x Hunter 2011 anime. It had adapted for the most part material that was in its manga form for such a long period of time, but people are not really examining the similarities or differences between the Hunter x Hunter 2011 anime and the manga, or looking at what the anime had cut and what the anime had extended upon. It's just that there's been so much hype surrounding the Bleach anime, and there's been this promise of more material being included. I just think that fans haven't considered that for new material to be included, they may have to cut out some unnecessary moments that are not needed from the manga. Some people think that the anime is good so far, but they feel like they need to slow the pacing down. They are fine with the pacing in episodes 1 and 2, but they feel like episode 3 was just way too fast and they cut too much. Now, I do kind of agree with this comment that they had rushed through some of the material in episode 3, especially when they were adapting chapter 494. But I do believe that it was because they were coming to the tail end of the episode, they had to end it on an impactful cliffhanger, and some of the moments that they had skipped over in chapter 494, they probably will properly adapt in the intro of episode 4. Like how Yamamoto's speech from chapter 488 wasn't included at the end of episode 2, but they had instead reshuffled it and included it in the intro of episode 3. I just think that fans should should be at least grateful that they're looking through every moment within the manga and handpicking what needs to be included and what doesn't. They are not just one-to-one adapting the manga into the anime. They want people to have a different experience with the anime, and I really appreciate that. If you wanted a one-to-one manga adaptation, like I said before, just read the manga, but you have to accept that these are two different mediums, and two different ways of storytelling need to happen here. There's a reason why the anime has a much more serious tone, why there's little to no comedic moments within it, but I just feel like it would disrupt the flow and the pacing of the anime if every scene from the manga was included. There's more people criticizing the animation as they weren't really a fan of the section of repeated animation between Quilge and Ichigo, and like I've said several times, I just think this is going to be corrected later. I just find it funny how people were so quick to call the series movie quality during the first 2 episodes, and the slightest hint of issues behind the scenes, people immediately start to slander the series and talk about it being mid, and suddenly they're having other issues with cut content. Again, it's too soon to actually give a final opinion on the series, and I'm really urging everybody to just have a bit more patience, because we'll have a better idea of what the anime staff are doing after the first core of the anime is actually released. There are some people who have issues with the cut content, some people who have issues with the pacing, and I think in general it seems like people are just complaining about episode 3 in general and not the entirety of the series so far, which is reassuring to hear, because all too often on Twitter people will just throw an entire series under the bus after just one bad episode. So I am kind of relieved that the criticism is just limited to episode 3. Simo Urahara has been quite vocal on Twitter and in his videos, where he has stated that the anime is suffering from rushed events. They're not including certain moments from the manga in the anime, and we know that Simo Urahara is a huge manga reader, and even watching his videos leading up to the release of the first episode, it was evident that he had wanted everything that is in the manga to be included within the anime. He believes that important scenes from the manga were cut, and these are moments that actually serve the story. And if you watch his videos, he does elaborate on this more, but personally I don't really think that the cut content actually affected the pacing of the story at all. You've got another user who's giving their comments on people complaining about the pacing of the new anime, about how people are now saying that the pacing is too fast, after years of them saying that the pacing was too slow in the original 2004 series. Flame of Rebirth, another popular content creator, also comments on the bad takes on Bleach episode 3, as he says that he expects true fans of Bleach to know the difference between those who are praying for the downfall of the series and those who are actually celebrating its return. He concludes that episode 3 was good, while recommending that he doesn't let anybody take that away from Bleach fans. Somebody had commented that the cut content that's bothering him are moments like the lieutenant's meeting that had happened, or Chojiro's funeral would have been more impactful if they had included Byakuya's speech. Flame of Rebirth doesn't believe that any impact was actually lost, because Kira, we don't really know anything about him anyway, and he was killed in the next scene, and Sasakibe was a character in general, even within the manga, who was actually developed upon further after his death, where we get that flashback where Yamamoto is avenging him. In the manga, Byakuya's speech kind of felt like a desperate attempt to give Sasakibe some characterization. He may just remain as a mysterious character who's always there that we just don't know much about for anime only viewers, or they may decide to include more about him during the flashback sequence later, or they may even cut out Sasakibe's flashback when Yamamoto faces off against Driscoll Bursey. While Byakuya's speech is really emotional and impactful, if it means that this scene is cut so that we can have another flashback where we get to see Yamamoto versus Yuhobak, then I'd much rather prefer that, to be honest. But we don't really know what direction they're going to go, because again, it's too soon to tell. In the comments of my episode 3 anime versus manga video, someone had left a really great comment in my opinion. How they had talked about each of the cutscenes and how they believed that each omission was actually done for a good reason. So this comment speaks about them cutting off the comedic moments, cutting off any redundant scenes. Firstly, talking about Byakuya's speech during the cremation ceremony, it is cut and replaced by that complete moment of silence within the anime. And when you do watch the episode, it does feel very impactful, and I had felt goosebumps when I'd watched it. You see Sasakibe kneeling before Yamamoto during this pin drop silence of a moment. This user, like me, believes that we will get more flashbacks of Sasakibe from Yamamoto's point of view later on. Secondly, he speaks about the lieutenant's meeting, which is pretty negligible, because it takes away from the serious tone of the series, speaking in reference to that moment between Renji and Rukia, where again, it's a moment of comedic relief that's removed, because Mayuri's explanation later serves to actually replace this scene in general. And the third point, he speaks about Sunsen's Muda barrier technique, which was removed from the anime, and he says that it just had felt awkward and weird to have this included within the anime, and it makes more sense to just have Ichigo interfere and to continue their battle. Now, the fourth piece of cut content that he speaks about is the discussion between Kira and the seated officers, where the dialogue was removed in the anime. Now, this user believes that the lines of dialogue actually take away from the suspense of the actual moment. And and by leaving them saying nothing and not bickering before the reveal of the Sternritters was actually more impactful, and it helps you to appreciate how the Shinigami were really caught off guard by the Quincy's invasion. He then speaks about how some people are complaining about the fast pacing, but he believes that this has purposefully been done to portray the sense of dread that the Shinigami must be feeling. Things are just spiraling out of control one after the other. The Shinigami are not given a moment of respite, so we are literally put into the perspective of the Shinigami, where the invasion is being rushed into, and before they know it, they are being slaughtered from every angle. In general, people who enjoy the manga just need to take a step back and look at why the anime is cutting certain moments. And they have to remember through all of their criticisms that Kubo is supervising the anime, and he has a huge role that he is playing within it. I mean, for the past year, if you've been reading his comments on his official fan club, then you'll know that he's been involved with the anime since the very beginning. He's been working closely with the animation staff for well over a year now. In the end, these issues of repeated animation, cut content, feeling like the anime is rushing through the material in the manga are just non-issues right now. We'll have more of an idea after the first core releases as to what they're actually doing with the series, and I think it's way too soon to actually make any judgments on the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime adaptation. I look forward to seeing more episodes and continuing to compare how the anime adapts certain moments from the manga, and I'm super excited to discuss each and every episode with all of you. Now, let me know your thoughts about this controversy surrounding Bleach episode 3. Do you agree with some of the criticisms, or do you feel like they've been overblown? Definitely continue the discussion in the comments and let me know your thoughts on the 1000 Year Blood War arc Bleach anime thus far. Lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.